It's reviewing time. Let's talk about Fantastic Four First Steps.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we're going to be discussing or debating Fantastic Four. But before we get into that, you already know what time it is. Recommendation time. Movie I am going to recommend that you guys should see. It's actually not a movie, it's a series. Is Dem Season 2. If you haven't seen Season 1, you should watch Season 1, but Season 2, really, really good. I'm on actually the last episode, so I haven't finished it yet, but I'm on the last episode. Season 1 is about a black family moving out of their old home, because in their old home there was a racial attack that happened that left their babies, like their son, dead, and then they ended up moving to a new area. They were still racism, but it wasn't as bad as, I think, the last area they were in was Mississippi. I'm not too sure, I don't want to make it up, but the new area is a nice area. Before they were living like in the country, but this time they're moving in actual, like, not the country. And it links to some ancestral type of voodoo-ish, where they kind of get slowly engulfed in like their anger and obviously the past, and it's got a lot to do with their ancestors, a lot to do with obviously racism, and a lot to do with how that comes into fruition. In season 2, this is now in the 90s, based in the 90s, but this one based on police detective, this serial killer, well, a suspected serial killer in the neighborhood, in the black community. The way that the killings happen is crazy. So then now it's linked to more kind of like paranormal, and how it links to like generational curse in a way. So it's really good. I recommend it.
The best thing I watched this week is the Drew Carey show. So I have kind of a almost 30-year history with this show. When I was growing up, it was one of those sitcoms that was in syndication. I would just see an episode and it would come up and I would watch random episodes. And then every couple of years, every 4 to 5 years, I go on this binge where I watch all 9 seasons of it. And it just never gets old. Like, it just does not age badly. The first season came out in 1995, ran for 9 seasons, so it concluded in 2004. So he's basically one of these comedians who get a sitcom for themselves and basically play like a heightened version of themselves. And then, like, there's wacky characters and the usual sitcom stuff. The basic premise of it is that Drew Carey is like a director of personnel at this mediocre department store in Cleveland. And he has these working class friends. So he's technically management, but he's like at the bottom level of management, so he doesn't have any actually real power, and so all his friends are kind of working class, and he kind of is stuck between those two worlds a lot of the time, and then plots tend to revolve around that a little bit. It's just a very smart and funny and creative sitcom. Just even watching it like almost 30 years later, it's still very funny, it's still very well written. It jumps the shark occasionally, where it will just go to weird places for just a moment, and then it will come back, and then it's like a working class sitcom kind of thing that they don't really make anymore as well. So it's a blast from the past in more ways than one. And it's just good, right? Like, beyond anything else, it's just a good comedy, a good sitcom where you can just watch any random episode and be entertained and have a good time with it. So for that reason, that's my recommendation this week.
It's time for the main event. Fantastic Four. Can you please give us one of your little synopsises?
So Fantastic Four First Steps is the newest entry in the MCU. It's basically a new start in more ways than one. It features the Fantastic Four, who 4 years ago went on their space trip where they were exposed to cosmic radiation, which gave them superpowers. And in the 4 years since then, they've basically been having all these pulpy superhero type of adventures. And now two big things happen in the story. One is that even though they thought they could not have children, Sue Storm is pregnant, which is a major part in the story. And also, Galactus, the planet eater, has decided that Earth is his next target. And so they have to study Galactus, try to figure out what he wants and how they can stop him. And that is essentially the plot. So, what did you think of Fantastic Four First Steps?
There was a debate going on social media, and it was about Superman and Fantastic Four and which one was the better movie. For me, I would have to say, surprisingly, because I would be so honest with you, when I saw the trailer to Fantastic Four, I thought it was going to be a boring film. However, I was so shocked. I had a really, really good time with this one. And I think I enjoyed this more than Superman. I will say this. I was surprised because the runtime was pretty short in comparison to any other Marvel projects. However, I felt like it was just right. And it felt like a fresher breath air watching this movie. And I felt like this was definitely something that Marvel needed because it just like everything about it. For me, I felt like there was a story, and and obviously it was so great that you didn't really need to know anything previous to watching this film. You could have walked into this film without knowing nothing, and that's fine because usually with a lot of Marvel projects you have to, you know what I'm saying, you need to know some sort of backstory. But with this film, you don't really need any backstory. Overall, there's obviously more points I have on it, but I just think overall, like this movie was just, it was simple but effective. Especially with one of the plots, which I'm not going to kind of get into it, but is when is to do with Galactus and his revelation to Fantastic Four in terms of what it would take for him not to, do what he was going to do to Earth. So for like that moment there, I was thinking, this doesn't feel like I'm watching Marvel. This felt a bit too mature. It felt a bit too risky. It kind of felt like we're coming back to Endgames. I feel like Marvel after Endgames, they've been playing it pretty safe when it comes to kind of like the conflict. And this one felt like, damn, this felt like it was for a mature audience that I didn't expect them to do that, in my opinion. So I really like the story. I was surprised that I liked the story. There was action, but it wasn't a lot, which I was surprised that I liked in this film. There was more kind of like drama. I can't believe I'm saying that because it's a Marvel film. Of course, you would like a mixture, right? But I think there was more drama than action, and it worked for this movie.
Yeah, so I think the comparison to Superman is both obvious and interesting, right? So the two came out 2 weeks apart, and we'll talk about that in detail definitely in the spoiler section. But I think it's also interesting because they are both colorful superhero movies that are treating characters that have not been done properly in the eyes of many people for a long time, and they're both trying very hard to do it properly. And I think I actually had kind of the inverse reaction. So with Superman, I was seeing the flaws mostly while I was watching it, and then as I thought about it more, I picked up on themes and character moments and stuff like that more, and so I like it now more than I did when I walked out of the theater. Fantastic Four, I was really enjoying the ride, but then once I got off the ride, I kind of was left wondering what the point was. And I think that is kind of the big problem because this is like if any movie has ever been made by a committee, this is it. I think like if you know the basic story of the Fantastic Four, which I think you don't, right? Like you've not read any of the comics, but if you know the basic version of the story, this is basically it, right? And it does very little beyond the basic story. There's a little bit here, but it tries very hard to do all the details properly. And I think they don't do anything interesting or enough interesting with the story to be a really satisfying movie. At the same time, what you said about it being an on ramp for the MCU, I think is completely correct. They deliberately constructed this movie to not require any, like if this is your first MCU movie, you'll be fine. Like it goes out of its way to not require anything else. I don't think there are any callbacks or Easter eggs or references or cameos that would confuse you if you've never seen a Marvel movie before. This is like the start of a new era, right? It's the third start of a new era this year for the MCU. So we'll see if this one sticks. But it is like I think it is interesting in that regard. I just found it like as a movie an unsatisfying experience because of the story. Let's talk about it.
Okay, I feel like we just get straight into it. Why did you like? Because it seems like you didn't like the film. Well, can I? Is it fair to say that you didn't like the film?
I like almost all of the pieces. It's just they don't add up to a bigger picture is my problem. I'm not even sure where to start because there's so many different things. So things I like the 60s aesthetic, the retro sci-fi thing, the flying car, the tall skyscrapers, the way their rocket ship looks, the way people dress and talk and all of that, or the window dressing is great. It's exactly what I would want it to be. Even the costumes are more more like if you go back to the last version from like 20 years ago, those look more like jumpsuits, and here they are outright like the blue and white. It's not quite spandex, but it's very clearly off the page, right? Like this is they literally took the comic book designs and said, okay, this is what it looks like. And then they realize that as much as they can. The little robot, the way their powers look, and all of that, it's all trying very hard to be proper Fantastic Four. And on the one hand, I kind of like that. Like, even like, for instance, Doctor Doom has not been, like, we did not see very much of Doctor Doom, right? But we see him in the after credit scene, and we see that Latveria exists, and that has been missing from the MCU up to this point. I think the performances are fine, like they do what they're supposed to. The plot is the most, like, it's solid. They have their personal problems, but they're broadly a family that cares about each other. And then Galactus shows up, and they have a choice to make between giving up their child or dooming the Earth, basically, right? And then they try to science their way out of it. Like the basic template of it is kind of the basic version of the Galactus story. What's a little bit different is here is Franklin. So Franklin, if you're not a comic reader, and I'm not really, but I've read enough comics to know about Franklin Richards. He's basically the most powerful mutant in the Marvel universe. He can just wish dimensions into existence, and they mention this here, right? Where Galactus says, because of how powerful Franklin is, that is why he can kind of replace him and kind of end his suffering in a way, right? So doing that from the very beginning, like in the first movie, like they could have done 2 or 3 Fantastic Four movies where they fight Mole Man in the beginning. The second movie ends with them founding the Future Foundation and all of that. And here that has already happened, and we're going straight to Mutant Baby and Galactus, right? And I think that is an interesting choice because it basically preempts most of the Fantastic Four. Like you could have easily milked the stuff that gets mentioned in this for like 4 or 5 different Fantastic Four movies, and nobody would have really complained if they did this. But they chose to kind of jump straight to the part that they cared about. And on the one hand, I kind of like this, where they said, okay, we have the story in mind that we want to tell, and we're going to do that, and we're not going to spend a decade building it up, and then maybe we get to it and maybe we don't. I kind of like that aspect of it. What I don't like so much is how this story actually unfolds, because there's a whole bunch of different moments here that don't, like, it mostly has to do with little character moments or like how certain scenes are written. So one example of this is they've confronted Galactus and they lost their FTL drive, and so it took them a month to come back, right? So not only does that not impact the story that it took them a month to come back, they had a month to think about what to say, and then they are completely blindsided by people wanting to know what happened and asking if they're safe and asking if Galactus has been defeated. And then they kind of just blurt out that Galactus wants their child, and if he gets the child, billions, like the rest of the planet, will be spared. They have no answer to this, and they have no strategy for breaking this to the public. And they also don't have another plan, like another story to tell, right? They're completely surprised and blindsided, so it's just blurted out. And then they are taken aback when the world reacts negatively to having been sentenced to death because Galactus is asking for this one person, which of course makes sense, right? Well, like, what parent would want to give up their child? But they have no plan for how to communicate this, and they have no alternative, right? And they had a month to come up with it, and they didn't. So like that's a scene where like everybody looks like an idiot. It's not sympathetic. It doesn't make sense, right? And it doesn't make me want to see what these characters will do next, because the last thing they did was just beyond stupid.
I understand what you're saying, but I think they stayed consistent with the theme of the unknown, so not knowing, and because they were in turmoil. So, for example, after they spoke to the public not knowing what to say, there was a scene with Pedro where he had all the calculations on the wall on what they could do, but he still didn't know. And obviously, when he was in that mindset, he was kind of like a wreck, like, because he didn't know what to do. He's usually the guy that knows what to do. And then you've got obviously the wife who's concerned about the child. That's her main concern. So all she can think about is the child. And then you've got the other two who they're not really speakers. You got I forgot what his character's name, but the one that can turn into fire. He's trying to be the guy that they kind of like rely on more, and he wants to get his ideas out there. However, they're not really turning him in, like, they're not really turning to him to be kind of like the spokesperson, because that is Pedro's job. And Pedro is currently, like, he's got obviously his mind, his child to think about, as well as figuring out how to defeat Galactus. You know what I'm saying? And I get what you're saying, but I still kind of understood why they didn't have an answer, because, like I said, they're already in turmoil. Like, everything, and obviously Pedro, he's the guy, he's the spokesperson, but he doesn't know what to do, and he always knows what to do. He's like probably one of the smartest guys in the whole universe, so it's reasonable, it's understandable for him kind of not to kind of like think of a response because of what's going on around him, his child, his focus on his child, as well as his focus on trying to create like a plan or plan to, you know, defeat Galactus. So for me, I kind of understood why they didn't have an answer, which it was consistently shown, especially afterwards when he was trying to, you know, his reaction to not knowing what to do with Galactus when he was talking to the group with all the equations and the chalkboard and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he is the smartest person and he's used to having the answers, and now he doesn't. And that should be a big character moment, right? So, first of all, that comes after the press conference, right? So, you've basically rejected Galactus's offer, and you're sitting on the spaceship for a month thinking about what to say, and you don't have a plan. Like, that's just a problem. And then the other part of it is, like, later on, one of my favorite parts of the movie actually was him trying to come up with an answer, and it all comes up short. I think that was like his frustration and his idea that there has to be an answer, and I just can't find it, and that is my failing. Like that is something I think that's in there, and that I think works quite well. There's just a bunch of places where characters just act in dumb ways. So one of them is you have this global network of portal generators to teleport the Earth, right? By itself, a cool plan. And then the Silver Surfer shows up and just destroys all of them. And you didn't guard this. You didn't see this coming. It's not so much about the logic of it, right? Like you can, you can theorize all day whether or not they should have seen the Silver Surfer coming, or whether they should have been able to stop her, or whatever, right? Ultimately, if the Silver Surfer wants to do something, she can do it, right? But it's like they're surprised by it, and there's not even an attempt to a countermeasure, and there's not even, you know what I mean? Like, it's one person you have to defend against, and you didn't anticipate it, right? So it's like stuff like this, right? Or then, like in the final sequence, Galactus has to walk onto the one portal generator that still works, and the entire plan hinges on him doing that. And then it turns out you can just push the guy into the portal. It's like he's supposed to be this massive, undefeatable titan, like basically a god, right? Like a cosmic being. And it turns out you can just fight him. And like, yes, you have to push him into this portal and teleport him away, like where it will take him a million years to come back without his spaceship or whatever. All fine, but it's so contrived, and the power level and the threat that comes from Galactus changes from moment to moment. I actually kind of like the idea that he's just a big purple guy, because the movie 20 years ago just made him like this amorphous nanite cloud on the logic of a big purple guy that eats planets is too silly for audiences. And this time we actually got it, which is nice, but that falls under the idea of doing all the trappings right and all the window dressing, but then neglecting the actual story itself. So there's just like the entire sequence that involves kind of how they're trying to defeat Galactus ultimately is by, like, beyond contrived. And I just squirmed in my seat in the cinema because it was just so dumb. Like I could not, like watching a smart plan unfold, even if it fails, is kind of is really satisfying and really fun. But this was just a bad plan that failed for obvious reasons. And if I feel like I'm smarter than Reed Richards, something's gone wrong, right? Because I saw all of that stuff coming. And why did the smartest man in the universe not think of this, right?
I do understand, because I'm not too, like I said, I haven't seen the comics, so I don't know how
He's smart.
Galactus is described. No, the Galactus. I don't know how he's described. What was your point about you could just push him and he's supposed to be seen as this like god level type threat. So I'm not too familiar. I can't really comment too much on that. However, for me in that scene, because like I said, I took it differently because obviously in that scene I saw the power of a mother's love for her son. See, if it was like someone like Pedro's character or Ben, yeah, if it was like their characters that that ended up doing something, because I feel like for me, I thought that scene was pretty much accurate. Like I said, the only ones that could have some sort of effect would be Sue and Fireball. I didn't even think he could have done anything, because even against Silver Surfer, he was struggling. Obviously, Silver Surfer was freaking terrified of Galactus, so I said he wouldn't be able to do anything. But I said maybe the only person that could potentially do something is obviously Sue. I don't know what kind of power she has, but that power that she was using, I said, okay, that kind of makes sense, even though Galactus wasn't really struggling on that. But then obviously when it got to the point where she saw that her son was in danger, I'm saying that he had her son, that's when obviously, like I said, the power of a mother's love is different. So that's when I kind of understood what was happening. I said, okay, that could make sense, because she still wasn't beating him, but she was kind of like holding him to a point which was believable. Do you know what I'm saying? So if it was a thing where she was like 100% pushing him back, then I'll be like, okay, that's a bit like, but it was a thing where she was mainly kind of like holding him, and she was pushing him a bit back, but you could still tell that he was in control. Like, he was gonna win. He would have, like, if it was just her, give him a few more seconds, and what I'm saying, Sue would have been cooked. So I couldn't have understood how that scene played out, what I'm saying, because she needed the other guys to kind of like chip in, because she was dying, what I'm saying? She knew she was dying. So for me, that kind of didn't make sense. However, like I said, I'm not too familiar with Galactus' character, so I don't know what type of threat level he should have been portrayed as. But for me, many enemies, like many villains, they have limitations, what I'm saying? So for me, I just saw that as a limitation, and I saw that as well as a big moment when it comes to kind of like just showing the theme of a mother's love.
I have not read enough Fantastic Four comics to know how Galactus usually gets defeated. But from a pure storytelling standpoint, if it's just a matter of fighting them, that's a bad story. Like, that's just not satisfying. It's not fun to watch. Like, there should be some kind of character moment or big twist or something where they come up with a plan that actually works and that actually outsmarts Galactus and that actually, in hindsight, holds up. Here they set up a very obvious trap and it doesn't work, and they kind of push him into it. But there's no character moment really where a character makes a decision, and because of the decision they make, they win. Something like that, right? Like one possibility could have been like to get through to Silver Surfer, and then together they defeat him, or something like that, right? Or they, I don't have a wish list of what it should have been. Like, just as a story, it's basically just they win, right? They fight and then they win. And there's not much else to it. And then this whole thing about a mother's love, well, that doesn't suddenly make her force field stronger. That makes her motivated. That makes her refuse to give up and all of that. If that's what it is, that's lame.
But there's been many times where your emotions strengthens you when it comes to superhero films.
That has happened in previous movies, and that doesn't make it better, right? It's just, there should be a decision, there should be overcoming a flaw, there should be, something like this, right? Where that is the reason you win. And even if it's just standing up for your principles, or like in the face of being challenged, or something like this, right? That is how you write
Yeah.
a big climax.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. Also, I think we might have missed something, because especially with Galactus, right? So yeah, I do understand. I do agree that Galactus did seem like a big threat, right? So kind of like the Fantastic Four going against him, it felt pretty much like an impossible challenge. But then there was a scene with the Human Torch that I kind of like remembered. I was like, oh, maybe that was an important moment, because remember, I don't know what kind of like energized Galactus, right? But they were kind of like plugged into him when we first saw him in his world, and there was like kind of like wires plugged into him, right? The Human Torch, when he came onto Earth, Human Torch kind of like took off one of the caps in his backs, and then obviously you had the like fluid or lava flowing out of him. So maybe that scene was important in terms of like showing why Galactus was defeated by Sue, like like not easily, but why it was capable for her defeating Galactus, because he was weakening, like, as time was going on. But I don't think there was much of an emphasis put on it, but still it was a realization, because why would they show that one part of Human Torch doing that, and then they show that there was fluid coming out, like lava coming out of him, for no reason?
That might be the intention, but that doesn't make it a better storytelling choice.
The reason why I really like this film was kind of like the focus on family, because I felt like in this movie, like kind of the core appeal of it was obviously family, right? And I think that's why I think for me, I think that's why you feel like there wasn't, this is my opinion, I feel like that's why you feel like there wasn't much of a story in this film, because like there was just like, okay, beat the bad guy. But I don't think that was the main point of the film. I think like the main point of the film and the main appeal of the film was focused on the theme of family. I think that was like the main chunk of it. And obviously with Galactus, man, he was just kind of like the dessert, the side piece. He was like the vehicle that drives the film, but the main message and the main theme of it was family. And that's why I think, especially with Silver Surfer, like family was the reason why she got into the situation that, she was in, the love of her family. I think that's kind of like the message, especially that the direction that they were moving in towards when it comes to just like the whole Marvel universe, right? As I believe the Avengers are going to be more like a family. I do get it, like even the previous Avengers with the Endgame, they were kind of like a family, but I think with this one, it's gonna be more. I don't know why. I just have the feeling the way that they set this one up. I have a feeling that this was just gonna be more like they're more family orientated when it just comes to like the whole universe and when they obviously come together in Avengers. Is it a fair assessment to say the reason why you didn't like the film was because you thought okay it was pretty much a simple storyline where fight the bad guy and the bad guy dies, but yeah, is that fair to say? Number one, and obviously my rebuttal to that was because obviously the main theme that's not the main like that wasn't the main thing. The main gist of the film, the main gist of the film was the portrayal of family.
First of all, I don't agree that the previous Avengers were a family. They were friends, they were colleagues, they had gone through things together, but they were not a family. I don't think. This is an actual family, and that sets them apart. Like, even just in the broader Marvel universe, that sets them apart from the X-Men and the Avengers and Spider-Man. They are like the fact that they are a family is like for the most part, like Ben is a friend, but the other everybody else is related in one way or another, and that does set them apart. And so this movie playing that up makes perfect sense. And then you've got the parallel with Silver Surfer, who sacrificed other people's words to protect her own family, and then you've got primarily Sue refusing to do the same thing, right? Like, she's saying, I will not give up my child, but I will also not give up anybody else. And that is the difference between Sue and Silver Surfer. And that's where it kind of stops. Like, it seems like that is kind of where the theme ends. It's not developed any further. It's not taken any further. I think all of that is fine. Like, that's a fine thing to do. It's obvious, but it's fine. But what else you got is my question, right? Because I don't feel like the story goes anywhere beyond that, right? Like, they keep saying stuff about family and how important family is and what you give up for family and all of this. It kind of stays at that level.
I don't think I agree because I think after that it was more to do with sacrifice, individual sacrifice, which still falls into the whole theme of family. Especially like for example, what Human Torch was about to do, sacrifice himself, obviously to save obviously his family, Fantastic Four, and obviously yeah, Sue and Pedro's son. He's going to sacrifice himself. And then obviously Silver Surfer ended up sacrificing herself when she realized that listen, this is going to save obviously my family as well as everyone else's. And I think they did play. I think they did continue on. They did kind of like. It's not that they continue on from obviously that moment where Sue said she's not gonna sacrifice her son and the world as well. I don't think they kind of like developed it more, but they did continue on with it where she obviously pretended that she was going to give up her son to Galactus, but in reality she wasn't. So it was a way, you know what I'm saying? So that still kind of does fall in line. It, number one, reveals how she was going to save her son and the Earth, and it still kind of it falls in line with the message as well.
I don't know. It just seems like they stopped at the first step, or maybe they took two steps and that's where they stopped. I don't know. It's like nobody has to make a really big decision. Nobody has to make a really big sacrifice. What exactly is Sue giving up by refusing to give up Franklin? Right? Like, no, like they still win, right? And you could cut out the entire thing, skip straight to the we're teleporting Earth, so that Galactus can't find us bit, and it's the same story. Like, all the character moments are the same, the character places are the same. Is the problem? They just filled in some blanks where they said, okay, in these 7 places we're going to add in a reference to family and how important it is. That's where we're gonna stop. That's the problem.
But yeah, so I'm gonna kind of like move on, but because I'm just a bit like confused in terms of like what are you saying? Okay, just to quickly ask, are you saying what does she give up based on how the movie ended? Or are you saying that as in well you have to be saying that based on how the movie ended? The reason why I was gonna say I'm saying that is because technically they were gonna give up themselves.
It's like, I'm more thinking about how do you make this interesting? Like, where do you go from, okay, I've made this choice that I will not hand over my child, but I will also do what I can to save everybody else. Where do you go from there? And the answer is not really anywhere. Having a choice come at a cost of some kind is like one of the ways in which you can make that interesting. This is just what I'm saying. So stuff like, and I think stuff like that is entirely missing. And I think this entire thing is kind of rooted in how this character portrays Sue and by extension Reed, right? So like there's just a bunch of weird things in here. So where like this entire thing about this entire choice to make Sue highly pregnant in the first half of the movie, right, until their encounter with Galactus, and like in the aftermath, right, and It's just a weird choice. It just makes no sense. Why would you go into space in that state, right? Like, obviously it's because she's the main character, but you put like it's just strained believability that anybody involved would make that choice, right? And we do it because the author has decided that it's going to be fine and that she's going to be the big hero at the end, right? That's just one more way in which it kind of weakens the story, where and there are ways around this, right? So Franklin could have been born 6 months ago, or she's like the first trimester or something. She knows she's pregnant, but not very far along, or like there are different ways you can craft this to make it not as stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? I will low key slightly agree with you. But what I think they were trying to do is because they were trying to show some realism in that, because obviously that's still her job. And when pregnant women, even though women are pregnant, they're still working. You know what I'm saying? To a point where they can't be working anymore. So I think that's
But
kind of like the realism.
working is one thing. Like doing your desk job is one thing.
Yeah,
Going
yeah, yeah.
into space to fight a cosmic being at 9 months pregnant is just nonsense.
I know that's not what you're saying, but you can't really compare the two because there's humans and then there's superheroes. So what's like kind of like surface level, and like even though that is dangerous, as I said, I agree with you because that's still dangerous. But in a way, I still kind of like understand why they did that, because that's still her job and she still wants to do her job. She still wants to work, even though she can still work, even though she's pregnant. So it's like, okay, so maybe they just didn't see the threat and the danger as high, even though the threat and danger was unknown. But even with the introduction of Silver Surfer, they should still be like, okay, you know what? Silver Surfer seems very dangerous. So maybe my wife should stay home. So I do agree with you. That's why I'm like not really arguing with you. I'm just trying to say I think they were just trying to show realism in that scene with her still going there because that's still her job at the end of the day, and pregnant women are still working. That's
I mean, realism would be she stays away from danger as far as possible. That would be the realistic thing. It's not realistic, and that is what then strains belief. But it's like this bigger pattern of she's also the one who's by far the most powerful, and she's the one who defeats Galactus in the end, almost single-handedly. Meanwhile, Reed is kind of a chump, right? Like Outright has, first of all, not only does he not come up with anything really useful other than plot exposition, he also has this scene where he talks to Franklin about, I don't want you to be like me because there's something wrong with me. Like I've still not quite figured out what they meant by that, but it rubs me the wrong way. It just weirds me out. So, but that's like this unbalance, right? Where Sue is unrealistically awesome in a very exaggerated way, whereas they constantly try to deflate Reed as much as they can. And that is like something that goes throughout the movie, and that it's kind of weirding me out a little bit because I feel like something's going on there. Like the thing about Reed Richards is that he is so smart, he has trouble relating to other people. There was this one scene in this where he says something like, "Look, I've done the math. Handing over Franklin is the logical and ethical and feasible way of solving this problem, and I'm not gonna do it." And then she still bites his head off for even articulating the option, even though he says like 3 times, "I'm not gonna do it. I'm just saying that's our situation." Like the movie seems like it's got a slant to it, and I'm not even sure what it is. There's some weird undercurrent that kind of made me uneasy. It doesn't contribute to the story. It's not required by the story, and it's just weird. And that's kind of adds to the column of strange character and story choices. That by itself doesn't ruin the movie, but it kind of adds up to a really unsatisfying conclusion where all we need is Sue to be, a mama bear, right? And to protect her young, and that solves the problem. And it's just a lame story. Like, and kind of that comes from all of these things that I've mentioned, kind of culminate in this moment. Like, and yes, like she almost dies as a result, but she wins, and there's no real danger anywhere, right? So it's just stuff like this is kind of like the entire movie is steeped in stuff like this, and as a result, it's a worse story. It's not about her being powerful or anything like that. I would have preferred a version where all 4 Fantastic Four come together and actually work as a team and actually contribute to a solution together. And everybody has their own thing to contribute or whatever. That would have been more enjoyable. But the thing they gave us instead was worse from a storytelling and character perspective.
I understand. I feel like they still did that though. I feel like there were moments where they were working together, which
Yeah, a
led to the
few.
final moment, Percy. And it was the whole point that you made with her getting angry with Reed, pretty much based on his nature, because that's pretty much how he operates. I that's still kind of like, I get that, but huh?
It was also dumb. Yes, that a person would react in a stressful situation like this. But number one, she knows him. Number two, he's correct. Number three, he's not actually pitching this. He's saying things are so bad. Like this is like our pretty much our only move, and it's off the table. Let's try to come up with something else. And he's been trying to come up with something else for weeks. It's not like he's actually saying he's not the heartless being of pure intellect that says, well, clearly sacrificing one person to save 7 billion is mathematically optimal. Why are you upset at this, right? No, he understands why it's off the table, and he understands why then not actually going to do it. But it's like a moment in which he is distressed that this is the only feasible option at this point, and it's not feasible because they're not going to do it. And that is kind of his source of suffering, essentially. And there's zero sympathy for that.
I understand that. So what I was gonna say was, it's because a lot of the times, like, there's been characters where they have like a problem, right, where they do something which is in their nature, but it's not appealing, or it's not something which is normal, right? And a lot of the times you have to learn how to live with it. But that person that's learning how to live with it will still have moments where, when they kind of do what they don't like them doing, or they're trying to live with that, I wouldn't say pet peeve, but that thing which they're trying to control, right? That thing that they're trying to live with, there will still be moments where they kind of like lash out on them for doing that. So I think for me, that's how I kind of saw her. So like, even though, yeah, you're right, he was telling her like, listen, I'm not gonna do it. However, that is the only, like you're saying, that's the only feasible, that's the only option. That for me, I just saw that moment of her lashing out. I just kind of like, knowing that's him, and she just had a moment of weakness, and she just had a moment of weakness, but a realistic moment of weakness where you will lash out on kind of like someone's problem that's a part of their nature.
It makes sense that she would react in that way, but I think we've belabored that point, right? But she knows him. She knows what he means.
Yeah, I get you.
We've kind of covered like the big parts of Fantastic Four. There's just a whole bunch of little details here that don't quite hold up. The story itself is not that compelling. The pieces all kind of make sense, right? And I don't think there's logic breaks in this, but it's like nothing interesting happens because of this, right? It unfolds pretty much exactly the way you think it does, right? And I think that's a problem, and that is kind of why I found the story unsatisfying, and that's kind of my bottom line of the movie, right? But I think what's interesting is the comparison with Superman, right? Because both of these are fresh starts, right? Like this is the beginning of Phase 6 MCU. This is an on-ramp. This is like a clean break with everything that came before. Kind of, we'll see what happens in Doomsday and so on, like in the next Avengers movie. But like at the moment, like this movie by itself is very much as standalone as it gets. And Superman also is a fresh start of a continuity. They're both very colorful. They're both very upbeat. They both lean heavily into the look and feel of specific eras of the comics. They both try to be about like family and identity and things related to that in some way. So they're quite similar in this way, right? But what I found interesting is that while I found like Fantastic Four has a really good flow. I think it's got good pacing, it's got good moments, it's got like as I'm watching it, I'm having a good time. I just feel unsatisfied in the end. And with Superman, I have the exact opposite, where it's a bit messy, it's a bit chaotic, it's a bit crowded, and I'm a bit frustrated at some of the choices. But then, as I think more about it, it feels more satisfying because the character level of it is stronger, right? So Superman specifically about identity and role models and being being noble when the world doesn't want you to, or doesn't show you how, or is not going to help you, so you have to go your own path, right? And there's this idea of heritage in Superman where he thinks being Kryptonian means one thing, and he then finds out it's another. Then he has to kind of think about how he wants to be going forward and all of this, right? So because of stuff like this, I found Superman more satisfying as time has gone on. And I found Fantastic Four less satisfying because I feel like there's a bunch of predictable beats and a lot of pieces that look and feel right, but don't do very much. In a way, they're kind of the same, but also opposites in that way.
For me, the reason why I prefer Fantastic Four than Superman, it was just more straightforward. And it was kind of like with Superman, it's like, I hear what you're saying, but it's kind of like, it was so messy. It just kind of, I thought it kind of interfered and not ruined, but kind of just like interfered in the fluidity of things. Whereas Fantastic Four was more straight to the point, and their points were pretty much concise and connected. Even though they were simple, I do understand that. But because of the theme of the film, and because it was a fresh start, and because it was so straightforward, and because it was just done really good. Whereas Superman, it was like you said, it was even it felt messy. It felt like there was a lot going on, and it had moments which were really good. I do agree with that. But those moments were just moments for me. I was like, okay, as a story, I want it to just be a bit more cleaner. And like I said in the beginning, with kind of the shift of it being from, the Zack Snyder Superman to this Superman, I kind of preferred the Man of Steel just in terms of like the tone. In this one, it just felt more like cool. Yeah, aesthetically, it is more bright, 100%, but even just the tone of it felt more jolly. Like I said, it felt like watching a Marvel film. It felt like something like, it felt like, a bit of Guardians of the Galaxy, a bit of Thor, and even a bit of Avengers in a way. So I was thinking, okay, that's cool, but we have Marvel for that. Do you know what I'm saying? DC, for me, it felt like I liked DC and I liked Marvel because they gave two different things. Like one for me felt more lighter, more comedic action, whereas the other one, even though there is like characters that do give you that comedic action, I just felt like with just like the whole DC, I think with their films, it just felt more serious in terms of tone, in terms of like aesthetic. Like aesthetically is more darker. It's just more mature for me, you know what I'm saying? So that's why when I was watching this Superman, okay, number one, a lot's going on, and it was kind of hard to kind of like feel any kind of like emotional connection with Superman, even though this Superman was, I wouldn't say more realistic, because Superman's supposed to be a being that is kind of like God level ultimate being. This Superman did feel weak. If he felt very, very weak, and that was clearly intentional. And I'm still trying to process and accept that. The reason why I do accept it, actually, I'm starting to accept it more, is because there's going to be more Superman. So I'm hoping the character development, it gets to the point where he does reach kind of like God status, God level. Do you know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of looking forward to that, if that's James Gunn's intention. If not, and there's a thing where this Superman's still kind of like this weakling, that was kind of like my main problems with this movie. But I still liked it in a way, and I still can see the projection of it. So, but yeah, for me, Fantastic Four was just, it just felt like my kind of movie, and the drama in it was, there was like way more drama that was just more engaging for me, and I just felt more connected with the characters in comparison to Superman.
Yeah, it's interesting that I have such an opposite reaction to it, because to me, in Superman, there's an actual character dilemma, right? Like a character has to, like, I think the movie didn't quite put as much emphasis on the actual choice of what to do once he realizes what his Kryptonian heritage actually means. That part is a little bit rushed, and I wish the movie had made that more explicit. But no such thing exists in Fantastic Four, right? Like nobody actually has a choice to make. Nobody has a real setback. Like the entire solution to the plot is pure technobabble. Like they just decide that you can teleport the planet, and then once you can't, we can still have exactly one device that is big enough to teleport Galactus. You know what I mean? There's no real point at which anybody, like any character, is actually in a tough situation and has to make choices and has to live with the consequences of those choices. And I think that is the difference. Like in Superman, he kind of has to deal with like losing like the public relations battle and struggling with the idea that people don't respect him, even though he does nothing but help people. That's a real character moment that then leads into actual choices, like how he reacts to things and stuff like that. And it drives the plot as well. Whereas in Fantastic Four, I don't feel like anything drives the plot. Like Galactus shows up, he makes an ultimatum, they reject the ultimatum, they technobabble for 20 minutes, and then they win. That's kind of the bottom line of it. And that is what I find unsatisfying. Like once you look under the hood and say, yes, okay, we can put anything on screen, but is there anything interesting happening here? And I think in the case of Fantastic Four, the answer is very much no, because the only choice they make is not sacrificing Franklin. But that's not a real choice, because that was never going to happen. There's no version of the story where they give up their son to Galactus and then he moves on and the 7 billion people give a sigh of relief because they're not being eaten today. There's no way anybody ever will make a movie like this, because it's not the heroic template. So there was never any chance that they would give up Franklin, or that Franklin would ever be in any real danger, or that they would fail at rescuing Earth. Which means there are no stakes, and it means there are no consequences to anything. They kind of just sleepwalk through the plot. There's no stakes, there's no consequences, there's no trade-offs, there's no cost to anything. I think that is why, like, the entire thing is a fireworks display, where it looks pretty in the moment, it looks cool, and you're enjoying it as you're watching it, and then it's over and it's just nothing. That's my problem.
I feel like I'm opposite to your opinion as well. I just quickly, I think the functional equivalent of, obviously, like, consequences and kind of like the conflict and the dilemma, I think that comes in form of the lingering theme of sacrifice, what you're willing to sacrifice in Fantastic Four. And I think that's what is kind of like the thing which creates that conflict and the consequence. And I think that was demonstrated because obviously you had moments where, like I said, with Human Torch, he was going to sacrifice himself. And then you had moments with the mother willing to sacrifice herself, for the family, obviously for mainly her child, but for the family and for Earth. And obviously Human Torch, mainly for Fantastic, mainly for, the Earth as well, and but for the sun as well. So I think that, I think it came in form of sacrifice. But I do understand where you're coming from, but I think they portrayed it just in this form, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the theme is definitely there. It's just then it doesn't progress, right? And we've talked about that. And that is what makes it a fireworks display, I think. Like when Johnny says, tell Franklin Uncle Johnny loves him, and he proceeds to sacrifice himself. I think he tries to push Galactus into the portal, right? And he knows he will be stranded on the other side. I don't remember the exact details now, but he makes this big heroic gesture to sacrifice himself, and then it doesn't work. And then it's over and it's never mentioned again.
Surfer sacrifices himself. Yeah, I get what you're saying about Surfer.
Oh, yeah. Like the Surfer knocks him out of the path, right? So what? Like what happened here exactly, right? What value does like a big heroic sacrifice have if you don't have to? It's like in The Last Jedi. Remember that? Like there's the big battle on the Salt Planet, right? And these big Star Destroyer cannons that are shooting at the Rebel base, right? And they will break through any minute. And so Finn kind of gets in the speeder and kind of does a suicide run, right, to kind of drive into the cannon to destroy it, and then Rose kind of knocks him out of the path, and they both survive, and then they win the battle anyway because somebody else, like Luke, shows up, right? So it's a similar thing, right, where somebody makes a big gesture, and then another character prevents them from having to pay the price of that gesture and of that decision. But we're meant to feel good about the fact that the character made the decision, but they're spared from having to pay the price. You know what I mean? Like if there would actually be real drama here if Johnny was now stranded on the other side of the galaxy, with Galactus, because he decided that there was no other way, and he's not going to see Franklin grow up because of this, and Franklin's not going to have an uncle because of this, and Sue is not going to have a brother, and so on, right? That would have been an actual sacrifice. But simply making the gesture and then author fiat saves you. Like, how is this engaging?
I feel like we're gonna go back and forth because I had a rebuttal, but we're gonna go back and forth. So let's just say,
yeah. So
yeah,
I think that's where we come down to. Like, it's like I just find this whole stuff hollow.
Yeah.
I didn't hate the experience of watching it, but it's like, okay, what exactly happened here, and why? Like, why should I care about any of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get what you're saying. Well, I don't know. Do you have anything else to bring up before we go into last thoughts?
There's lots of details to kind of mention. Like we could talk about Doctor Doom and how about the end credit scene is especially lame because it's like literally nothing happens. Like we know Doctor Doom exists in this. We know he's coming in next movie. We even have seen his character design. Like if you watched like the Comic-Con reveal last year, and he literally just shows up and goes after Franklin. That's the only thing that happens in the end credit scene. And it's like, okay, could you put in a little bit more effort? Like you're teasing something we have known for a year is happening.
I didn't know that.
A year ago there was this announcement that Robert Downey Jr. is playing Doctor Doom.
Oh no, sorry, I thought you meant in terms of the knowledge of Franklin and
Dr. No, not the Franklin part, the Doctor Doom part.
Okay, yeah, Doctor Doom. Yeah, I knew Doctor Doom. Yeah,
so what's new in this is that Doctor Doom knows about Franklin and is interested in Franklin.
Yeah,
that's the only thing that's new. but like the scene itself is just purely look at this.
Yeah, I
You
agree
know?
with that. I'll agree with that one. I do think they could have put more effort into kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, that end credit scene. So I will agree with that.
Yeah, so like again, like what I was trying to say is there's a whole bunch of little details we can pick apart. But I think to me the bottom line is really it uses this theme of family and what you will do for family, like in a very superficial window dressing kind of way, in a way that takes no risks, makes no statements, does not even craft an interesting story. And the story itself is very much on rails. It's like I called it a fireworks display earlier. I think the better example is a theme park ride, where it looks exciting, but you are on rails. Like nothing will happen. There's nothing, there's no sense of real danger or real stakes or whatever. It's purely a sequence of events as opposed to a plot. And I think that is really what's unsatisfying to me. And like I'm not even gonna rewrite the movie, right? Like, but you can imagine situations where characters have to actually give something up or choose between two things that are mutually exclusive, and so they have to walk away from one thing they want. Something like this, right? That's just not in this movie at all, and for that reason, it's hollow. And I say this even though like all the pieces are good. Like I don't think there's a bad performance in this. I think it looks good. I think they make the powers look good. Like even the stretching thing was something that's easy to make look cheesy, but it still looks good. It still looks serviceable at least. So all the pieces are good. It's the story that's found in and that is purely sprinkled on top. It's not the center of the story, which is what it should be. And if you want to get us to care about these characters, then the story needs to be front and center, right? And at this point, I don't really care about these characters. I think that they're just action figures at this point. They might be more in future movies, but at this point, they're just action figures playing out a plot, like or playing out a sequence of events even. And kind of that is why I'm so down on the movie. Like I don't actually hate it. It's not like Captain America this year was worse than this, right? I would say Thunderbolts is better. Captain America is worse. And if this is like an indication of what future MCU movies are like, then at least the quality is there compared to what they've put out over the last 5 years. Now they need to bring the story, and if they don't do that, then you're not going to get me to care very much. I might enjoy the ride, I'll still show up for fireworks every once in a while, but I'm not engaged by it. You know what I mean?
Mm. So was that your last four?
That's my last thoughts. Yeah. So final rating, 5 out of 9. So not terrible, not great.
Well, for me, I had a really good experience with this one. I think it was a kind of like a great start to a new era. They didn't give too much, but they didn't give too little. Like Ant-Man, for example, that was kind of like their introduction to the whole Kang saga, and that felt very underwhelming for many, many reasons, which I won't go into. Whereas I think with this one, like I said, I think everything about it was just right. I think kind of like the theme of family, and obviously themes of family comes with things, right? And I think what it comes with mainly is sacrifice. I think they've done that well, and I think that was kind of like the main point of the film, and that was kind of like where you get kind of like the internal conflict, the dilemma, and the emotional engagement. So for me personally, I think it was just a bit more polished and just cleaner in comparison to I keep mentioning Superman, but obviously that was just like the main topic. That was the main debate conversation now going on social media. So let me not compare on it too much. But yeah, I think for me, I had a good time. I had a very good time. So I'm gonna give this one a 7.5 out of 10. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining into today's debate. We haven't had this one in quite a long. Actually, I don't know. Have we had a debate in quite?
We've agreed about a few things recently,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I
this
don't
was a
think we had a.
nice change of pace.
Yeah, I don't think we've had a debate in quite a while. We've been agreeing on quite a few things, like you said. But yeah, so thank you very much for joining today's debate.
So if you've made it this far into the conversation, if you liked what you've heard, please tell a friend. And if you hate what we do, please tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
Well, guys, we will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Bye bye.